we're joined by University of Johannesburg international law expert, Professor Hennie Strydom. Prof, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Look, the African Peace Mission delegation will be meeting, of course, with Russian President Vladimir Putin today. The timing of the visit seems a bit off, and yesterday Kiev launched its counter-offense. What can this mission actually achieve out there, Prof?
Yes, I think the one important point is that they will achieve what the parties are prepared to agree on. So they must first reach consensus on what is being put forward, and that will determine the outcome of the intervention by this delegation. And that, I think, is something that at this point in time we cannot predict. It's all sort of subject to speculation. And as South Africa's president has indicated, it's a process that will unfold in the next couple of days or weeks or months. And that will give us an indication of what the parties are moving towards.
What should we be reading from yesterday's standoff between the Polish authorities and the group of South African journalists, as well as the security team that was accompanying the president, Prof?
Yeah, it was there was a lot of speculation about the reasons for that, and but there's a little bit of a lack of information. Yesterday, this morning, there was, additional information which may provide us with the reason why it happened. According to the Polish authorities, the information provided by South Africa was incomplete as regards the people on board that plane and possible equipment or weapons or whatever the case might be. And that was the reason why the intervening action by the Polish authorities was necessary, and which delayed the other plans of the delegation to fly onward. Whether there are other reasons at this point in time, I do not know. We will have to speculate about it, but it seems to me that the parties will, I think, in due course settle this issue diplomatically if necessary, but that now is actually history.
Now, Professor, do you think that South Africa should then use this mission as a chance to clarify its foreign policy? I mean, we heard Minister Naledi Pandor reiterating this week that South Africa, in fact, won't be bullied, was her exact words, to alter its foreign policy for trade deals.
Yes, of course. South Africa has clearly indicated where what its position is regarding this conflict. And right at the beginning, when the military invasion, which was actually a war of aggression against Ukraine, started, the views at that time were different from subsequent ones. But in the meantime, South Africa has claimed to be neutral in this whole conflict, and that is a matter for debate. But the delegation has now sort of been established. It has arrived in Ukraine. It has seen President Zelensky, and as you've just heard, they will now move to Russia to speak to President Putin. So, and there is seemingly willingness on the part of the warring factions, Ukraine and Russia, to listen to the proposals put forward by the delegation, and I think that will form the platform for further discussions and further proposals and further interventions by the delegation and the parties involved. I also think that as I read the issue, and that's normally the case in matters of this kind, is that the first objective is to try and establish a ceasefire, the end of hostilities for a time being, so that the negotiations can go forward. What is unclear at this point in time is what are the different positions of the parties to this conflict and what they actually want from these negotiations and from the intervention by the peace delegation. And that will be the hard part. And as we know from other examples, most recently this Sudan one, where there's a ceasefire negotiated, the next day it's broken. So it's a rather tense situation, as we know, and we will see how this is going to unfold.
And should we then, as a sovereign state, Professor, bow down to pressure from other countries on our foreign policies to a point where we are even being threatened with sanctions? Should we not take a stand?
Well, of course we should. I think every country has its foreign policy objectives. It has its historical reasons for that. There are strategic reasons for that. There are economic reasons and political reasons for that. And South Africa is no exception to that. So if this is its stance, then it should go ahead and not being threatened by all kinds of ramifications that may occur from the US or any other country. And I think the Department of International Relations and Cooperation is quite clear on this. It is, of course, always the way in which it is done is quite obvious matter for the debate and discussion and so on. But I think that the position has been made clear, and that South Africa is to proceed with this peace mission on that basis.
And just to wrap it up, Professor, I mean, speaking of positions there, we know that the US has been supporting the Ukraine with everything from arms to funding from day one. Shouldn't they also be questioned as to what exactly is their interest in funding this impasse? Because if they wanted to assist, they should have at least first looked at the peace talks that you just mentioned now without aiding Ukraine.
Initially, I don't think there was scope for peace talks. And I think the reason for that is the objective of Russia right at the beginning. And I didn't get the impression at the time that there was any scope at that time, and even subsequent to the initial military intervention, occupation of certain areas, that the parties will agree to peace talks. There were sort of attempts. I'm not saying that they were sort of, fully fledged proposals, etc., to settle this conflict. But I don't think at the time, and even last year, there was any scope for peace talks.
All right, Prof. Thank you.
It was a bit naive to think. It was a bit naive to think that it was possible at that stage.
All right, Prof. Thank you so much for your contributions. We're going to leave it there. That is Professor Hennie Strydom.